Welcome to Simply Sleepy. Tonight we set sail on quiet waters, a journey into mystery, comfort and rest. Close your eyes and take a long, slow breath. Let the air move in like the tide and drift out like the tide returning home. Your body grows heavier, your mind grows softer, and the world outside begins to fade away. In the stillness of night there is a harbour of dreams waiting for you, and at its edge a ship rests in shadow, its lanterns dim, its sails folded, its bell waiting to strike the hour that begins our tale. This is the 8th bell. Windhollow lived by the ocean and pretended not to listen. That was the only way anyone stayed. If you admitted you heard, the sound lived in your bones. If you pretended, the noise slid off the skin of your mind and you could finish your coffee and get to work. At 3:07 every morning, the bell in the ruined cathedral tolled once. The tower was a stump of black stone above the cliffs, ribs of rotted scaffolding still clutching the throat where the bell had once hung. Windhollow's oldest photographs showed that bell, whole and bright, heavy as a whale heart. Now it lay split on the floor, a bronze wound. No mechanism moved it, and yet people heard one cold, lucid note. The town called it the bell that tolled for no one. Calling it anything else made your life smaller. The Whitlows arrived in late autumn with a brass bed and 2 crates of encyclopedias and a daughter who kept a notebook in which she drew circles until the page went soft. Evan took the job at the marine laboratory. Clara unpacked the kitchen. Lucy, who was 7 and believed beaches were merely Earth's way of gathering its thoughts, sat on the back steps and listened. That first week, Evan woke at 3:07 to the sound. The note was clean as a blade of ice. He lay staring at the ceiling in the rented house that smelled of salt and old apples and pretended not to listen. On the 3rd night, Lucy's small voice drifted down the hallway, counting. 1. Silence stretched the way it does when you're trying not to think of cliffs. 2. Evan was up, bare feet on cold floorboards, hand on the jamb of his daughter's door. She sat cross-legged, hair a dark knot, eyes wide in the nightlight's yellow saucer. "You hear it," he whispered. She nodded, bright with the secret. "They're not supposed to be just one. They're supposed to be 8. "Who told you that?" "The bell," she said, as if explaining the rain to someone who had never seen water. He wanted to say, "We moved here for quiet." He wanted to say, "After the hospital bills and the interviews, after the job that changed cities on us twice, after the way your mother cried over a cardboard box of mugs because it was one change too many. We did not move here to hear a ghost bell talk to our kid." Instead, he lay beside Lucy until she slept, counting her breath. In the morning, he drove to the lab with the cliffs opening like a mouth on his right, the cathedral tower hunched like a sentinel with bad news. Locals said not to linger at the ruins after dark. Evan lingered anyway, but only with his rational mind. His measuring tape, his notebook, his old training in acoustics before he became the kind of scientist who catalogued plankton and wrote grant applications. He checked the hollow bell on the floor beneath the tower. Its crack ran through the bronze like a riverbed through a drought. Touching it left a scent on his hands like pennies and lightning. There was dust, gull feathers, salt. The air was warmer than it should have been. He climbed carefully until the stairs ended in a broken lip. The bell chamber had no bell, only a framework of beams and a rope worn to a whisper of fibre. Wind skated the stones. When the wave sets hit just right, the whole tower thrummed like a throat humming without a song. At the Historical Society, a woman with hair the colour of old paper told him. It was called the 8th bell of mercy. 7 bells for the hours of prayer, the 8th for... Well, mercy, they said, but that's only what people call power when they want to live with it. When did it last ring? Evan asked. She considered. Properly, in the famine, in the pest year before that, and in 1708 when the sea froze like a man's face at bad news. The rope broke in 1901, but the bell carried on. Lucy began to sleepwalk. Clara found her one night in her coat and boots, porch door open to the October cold. "Honey," she said, gentle, "let's go back to bed." "I have to go," Lucy said, sleepy but adamant. "They only let the little ones in." "Who?" "The people the water forgot. The bell tries to wake the town, but the town is pretending, so it tells me." In the morning, Lucy was a child again, cereal, school, drawing circles in the margins of math worksheets. That night, Evan sat on the hallway rug outside Lucy's room from 3 o'clock until 3:10. The single toll arrived like a gloved hand touching his sternum. The house sighed. Lucy slept through. On the next night she woke and counted, but she did not stop at 1. Her face was turned towards some far corner of the room. Her voice was calm, as if reading aloud from the very long caption beneath a picture in a book. 1, she said. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. She paused. The hallway felt as if it had leaned, and then softly, 8. Evan felt the 8 as a second sound, the idea of a sound, a pressure drop, a deep sub-song Wales might have understood. Clara, who had not been awake for the earlier nights, lifted her head, breath hitching. "What did you say?" Lucy blinked as if coming back from a farther room. "The 8th bell," she said, delighted and frightened at once, as children can be. "It's ready." Wind Hollow pretended harder. The grocer's radio grew louder in the mornings, as if noise could pack a space with certainty. People hurried past the cathedral with their eyes on their dogs, on their shoelaces, on nothing at all. "Can we go?" Clara asked. She stood at the sink, looking at the pearlescent sky. "Can we just go before whatever this is gets teeth?" "Where?" Evan asked, and hated that he was right. The job, the lease, the bank account like a scraped knee, and beneath all that, something he could not admit even to himself, a magnet in the bell, pulling at the small metal filings in his brain. If he could just understand the mechanism, the superstition would be drained, named, not real. Lucy drew a picture at school of the cathedral, the tower taller, the bell whole. Children clustered at the door, eyes closed, mouths open as if singing. Her teacher sent home a note that used the phrase imaginative fixation. On the 7th night, fog walked up from the water and folded itself around the house. At 3:07, the bell tolled once, and Lucy did not count. She smiled in her sleep. Evan did not sleep at all. On the 8th night, the air was clear and bitter, a polished coin of gold. The stars were too many. Evan felt them pinning the roof of the world like a pinned beetle. At 3:04, Lucy sat up. She swung her legs from the bed and stood. Her eyes were open and full of tide. Evan rose too. Clara stood in the doorway, hands on either side of the frame, as if steadying the house. "We're going," Lucy said. "It's kind, it's old, it wants to help." "What is—" Clara began. the bell," Lucy said, and walked down the hall, down the stairs, out into the cold. No one else in Wind Hollow came outside, though the town must have heard the door, the bare feet, the breath of the ocean. The town pretended not to listen. The town slept. They reached the cathedral. The door hung by one hinge, a tilt smile. The nave was a throat of shadow. Seawater had licked the floor long ago. Salt glimmered in crystalline lakes. Above, the tower showed its ribs. At 3:07 the bell tolled. It tolled once, and once was enough to take the world in its fist. The note scraped the frost from the air. The cliff face shook. Hairline cracks ran through the street behind them. Out on the black water, something like a breath lifted, then settled. The chandelier of steps up the tower shuddered. Lucy counted, voice steady. 1. Evan reached for her. She slid past him, small hand warm, moving as if following a rope only she could see. 2. The broken bell on the floor was not moving, and yet it rang. The note was a pressure wave more than a sound. Evan thought absurdly of how he had once measured resonance in amphitheatres and written papers on what old stones remembered. 3. A coil of rope at the base of the tower uncurled by itself like a snake deciding to consider the world. Dust lifted, turned, hung in the beam of Clara's phone light. 4. Clara's breath showed like a bouquet of ghosts. "Lucy," she whispered. Not stop, not number, just the name, which in a kind world could mean all the ways a mother meant to stay. 5. Out beyond the high window the sea heaved, then calmed, heaved, then calmed. Evan thought of lungs. He thought of what lungs did when something was choking. 6. Within the stone a deeper voice moved. Evan felt it in his teeth. His fillings hummed. 7. Lucy stopped at the base of the tower. The rope lifted. It swung toward her like a hand. She reached. "Lucy!" Evan lunged. She turned her face toward him, and he saw that she was not asleep. Her eyes were open and clearer than he had ever seen them, as if the world had finally come into focus. "It only lets the little ones in," she said gently, "because we're the ones you can't bear to pull back." "What is it?" Clara asked, and in that moment she was braver than the ocean. "The 8th bell," Lucy said, "the one for mercy, not mercy for us, for them." She pointed past them to the high window, to the night beyond. At 3:10, though no mechanism moved, the rope pulled taut. Somewhere a rusted pulley remembered its purpose. The note that came then was not heard by everyone, perhaps not by anyone but Lucy and the tide. She did not say 8. She took one step up and the rope took her weight. Evan grabbed for her. The rope slid through his hands like river silk. Bronze coal burned his palms. The skin split. He held anyway. He had a handful of his daughter's coat, a handful of the present tense. He could hold on and break the spell with the blunt force reason of a father's body. He met Lucy's eyes. What lived there was not terror, not glamour, not possession. It was a solemn joy. It was the look she had when she picked snails off the rocks and carried them to the tide pools, murmuring encouragement to their snail god souls. "Daddy," she said, "it's okay. They're only lost." He let go. The rope carried Lucy into the dark like a prayer someone had kept polished for years and finally used. The note rolled outward. The sea rose. Figures stood where there had been only water, men in salt-stiff jackets, women with shawls, children with wet hair slicked to their skulls. Not solid, not flesh, names the water still remembered. They looked toward the tower the way thirsty people look toward wells. Lucy's voice came from somewhere above. "This way," she called, and the drowned turned their faces like flowers toward the sun. Wind Hollow slept. Evan and Clara stood and watched the children of the sea file past them, like a story you cannot stop telling yourself once it begins. They went through the door of the cathedral as if through a gate. On the other side there was nothing, which is another way of saying there was something no human architect had made. The last of the drowned turned and looked at Evan. He might have had Lucy's mouth. He might have had Evan's father's eyes. He raised his hand. He was not asking for help. He was thanking. When it was over, the rope hung slack. The bell was cracked as it had been. The tower breathed. The sea lay down again, exhausted and pleased. Clara sobbed once, like someone who had been holding a scream between her teeth for years and finally decided not to. Evan put his bleeding hands on her shoulders and did not try to stop her from shaking. The town did not wake. The town pretended. In the mornings after, the bell still tolled at 3:07. Evan woke to the note, but he did not count. He went to the cliffs and sat with the gulls and the blackberries that stained his fingers. He watched the tower as if watching over a friend with a fever. Sometimes at dusk he saw a small figure standing at the edge of the ruined window. She held a lantern made of salt and wind. She lifted it, and the light fell across the paths of the lost. He learned to sleep again. He learned that when mercy happens and you survive it, it becomes your job to keep the door clean. Wind Hollow went on, pretending. Evan and Clara did not correct it. They bought more apples from the grocer. They rebuilt the brass bed. They left the kitchen light on at night in case a child with wet hair needed to see the way home. The 8th bell tolled. It tolled once, and beneath the sound, like a bass note to a hymn, Evan heard Lucy's voice counting on for those who could not hear. And so the bell falls silent, its echoes dissolving into the night. The ship drifts farther from sight, sails folding into the horizon, its secret safe, its story now a whisper. Let your breath remain slow. Let your body sink deeper into rest. You are safe here. You are calm here. And you are free to drift into dreams. Thank you for listening, and may your night be filled with peace until the next story calls you home.